morning, guys, and welcome to the Monday Movie Memo, where we like to talk about things that happened over the weekend and get you prepared for the week ahead. We have a lot of really good content coming onto Cinema Blend this week, a lot of it focused on Edge of Tomorrow, and one of our favorite stars, Tom Cruise. And there's been so much debate about whether Tom Cruise is worth seeing in blockbusters anymore, or if some people have given up on him. We are going to talk about his filmography up to this date, which is pretty spectacular. I mean, to not recognize Cruise and the career that he's had is insane. Maybe as insane as Cruise is himself, as some of you like to argue. I'm fascinated that so many people on our site have given up on Cruise, or at least people who are reading our site. And in our comment section, so we're going to talk about Tom Cruise and the great Edge of Tomorrow, which opens this week, all throughout the week on the site. We have a couple of follow-up pieces about A Million Ways to Die in the West. Eric attended the press junket for that film and got some really interesting stories from the cast and crew, and he's going to talk about some of the cameos in the film, and he's going to talk about some of the Western references that are hidden inside of Seth MacFarlane's film. And so pay attention to the site for those pieces. But what I wanted to get into for the memo today is Maleficent. Maleficent was the #1 movie at the box office this weekend. It earned an estimated $70 million. Very impressive in this summer frame where superhero movies have been dominating up until this point. Almost every superhero movie that has come out, from Captain America to The Amazing Spider-Man 2 to X-Men Days of Future Past, have all earned enough money to lead the box office charge. I don't believe we've had anything hold on to the box office for 2 straight weeks because Godzilla broke up the Spider-Man train, and we thought maybe X-Men Days of Future Past would hold on to top the box office, but Maleficent was definitely strong enough based on the backs of families looking for some family entertainment, and they saw the Disney brand, and they see Angelina Jolie in a Sleeping Beauty movie, and they figured that it's safe enough to go. But one of the main questions that I got, like from the minute that this film was announced, was whether it's going to be good enough for kids. Now, I'm a parent. I'm one of the parents on the Cinema Blend staff. I've got 2 boys. They're 10 and 6. I used to run a column that a lot of people read called When Can I Watch This with my kids, where we touched on old movies and we like to comment on films that are in theaters right now. And I got a lot of tweets from people who had followed that column for a while, and they were asking me specifically about Maleficent. And first off, I really appreciate the fact that you guys are still following along with that theme, and that you trust my view as a parent to tell you what is appropriate for your kids. And we always preface it by saying, you know, every family's different, every parent is different, and what your kid can handle is going to change from, you know, family to family, from house to house. And especially if your kid has a specific taste for something, and with Maleficent, it's if they have a taste for fantasy films and not sci-fi, but, you know, fairies and ogres and dragons and whimsical creatures like that. The Disney brand is confusing on Maleficent because it's not a family film. And it's the conscious decision to model the storyline after a villain, which I don't know if this is going to become a trend or not. You know, it's the Wicked template, and it's trying to tell a popular story through the eyes of an antagonist, which I think sets up a prism that makes it very difficult for any audience member, but specifically for younger kids, to identify with the protagonist, with the lead. Because you have Angelina Jolie, who is playing this villain, and she comes with all of the archetypes that you expect from an evil character. She's cloaked in black the entire time. She casts a spell that damages the... see, Sleeping Beauty or Aurora, she's not the lead in this movie. I talked about this in a column on the site, that the tones and the directions of the film are always shifting in a way that it makes it very difficult for the audience to get into a rhythm, because you don't know really who you're supposed to root for. We're going to get into a lot of spoilers and in-depth conversation about Maleficent, so let me start by saying that if you haven't seen the movie yet, I'm going to talk about plot specifics, and so if you want to be protected from all that, please leave right now. But if you're a parent and you haven't taken your kid yet and you're kind of wondering if it's okay for them, then carry on. But and I won't spoil too much of it for you, but the way that the movie is structured, you're supposed to like Maleficent, and you're even supposed to like this king, who's played by Sharlto Copley, because they're friends and they have a bond, and then something comes between them. The king, or before he becomes the king, he has to betray Maleficent. Then you have to go through a period where you don't like Maleficent because she's seeking revenge, and revenge is such an odd plot line to put into a family film, because most family films, like I can't think of very many that hinge on a revenge storyline, especially for something that is this brutal violation of Maleficent. And there have been some other people who have gone down some darker avenues in exploring the way that the king sort of betrays Maleficent, because it has some really harsh undertones to it. I'm not going to get into that conversation here. Then almost immediately you have to start to sympathize with Maleficent, because she changes gears almost immediately and kind of regrets the spell that she's placed on Aurora. Then she becomes Aurora's protector. Then she has to confront the king, and then by the end of the movie we get to a point where the king is trying to kill Maleficent, and it builds to a happy ending which leads to the death of Aurora's father. Where in that does it sound like a family film? I mean, that does not sound like Disney, but I think that they locked themselves into that course once they decided to build a movie around an evil character. I understand that it's an original spin, but I think it's one that paints your filmmaker and your storyteller into a corner. And I've said on the site before that I think what happened with Maleficent, maybe I'm wrong, is that they approached Angelina Jolie with the idea of, hey, would you be interested in playing this character? And when she said yes, then they kind of backpedaled to try and fill in and come up with a story that would fit the fact that they have her to play this character. Maleficent never felt like a family film to me. But there are a lot of really interesting things to look at if you're coming at it from a young audience, especially earlier on when Maleficent is a teenage fairy, and she's played by a younger actress, and she's exploring this land that she presides over that's next to the human kingdom, and it's filled with all these visually creative and extravagant creatures. And the director is a first-time director, but he's had a ton of experience in special effects, and it shows. Like watching Maleficent take flight with her wings is fantastic. It's thrilling. I think a lot of kids can get into that, especially in the 3D. It's when they start getting into these Shakespearean themes, these darker undertones of betrayal and this lust for power that Charlton Copley's character goes through, and then the vengeance subplot that I just explained. That's where I think the movie loses kids, or won't keep kids as entertained, because there's supposed to be this long middle act that bridges the setup and then what happens in the conclusion. And I think that's where they're going to lose most younger audiences. People came up to me like right after our screening, and I think they were surprised that I didn't bring my boys, because it was the Disney screening. It was supposed to be the Disney summer movie, and they were like, "Oh, did you not bring your kids because it looked scary?" And I just didn't bring them because they weren't interested. They saw the trailers. They were all over the Disney Channel, and they just didn't think that it was something that would interest them. Maybe because they're boys, I don't know. But I mean, this has dragons and battles, and it should be something that's aimed for them. But after seeing it, it wasn't that I was worried that they would be scared, because Maleficent doesn't really up the danger all that much. It's just that my initial reaction was I thought they'd be bored. I didn't think that there was enough going on in Maleficent to hold their interest. And so maybe because they're young, it could be because they're 10 and 6, and there's not enough interesting story going on in it, that I didn't think it was going to hold their interest. Your kids might be different, and I think that the movie works for kids who are around... I'm going to put the age at about 10. I'm going to say it's about 9 or 10. And again, it depends on what kind of films your kids have seen before this. If they're into Dark Crystal, if they're into Willow, films like that, I think. Maybe even The Princess Bride, where there are some clear-cut good and evil characters, this might be the type of story that they're interested in watching. It's not the most accessible Disney film. It's not the kind of thing that you can bring the whole family to, just because it has the Disney label on it. So I do think you might need to check it out. But there's nothing in it, there's nothing harsh, like there's no harsh language. Even when there's violence, it's not gratuitous, it's not bloody. It's softened for kids. It's intended for kids. I just think that by shifting its motivations all over the place, and by trying to tell the storyline through the point of a villain, Disney set the movie up to not fail, but it gave it one too many obstacles that it had to overcome if it was going to connect with its audience, because Angelina Jolie, she can connect with an audience, And I think that they wanted it to work in the way that Johnny Depp in the Alice in Wonderland film is like, hey, we have this huge A-list star with global potential, and here she's playing a live-action version of an animated character that you're very familiar with. Come see that. But there just wasn't enough story, I thought, that was told at the level of younger kids. And so I'm going to say that Maleficent was going to work better for kids who are probably in that 10, 11 age, who might be able to get a little bit more out of the undertone stories that are going on, and still also be entertained by the visual wizardry of the first act. But once that second act and the plot starts to get into play, I think younger kids who have grown accustomed now to the fairies and the visual elements are going to completely lose interest in the story. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me what you think. Parents, weigh in. I love your feedback, and I love getting into a little conversation with you guys about, like, did you take your kids to see it this weekend? How did it work on them? Did they love it? Did it not hold their interest? You know, this is the big family movie that's out there in theaters right now, and Disney has the market a little bit cornered because we don't have an animated film coming until How to Train Your Dragon 2. There's no Pixar this year, and there's no traditional Disney animated film until, boy, I'm not even sure what's coming down. I know Big Hero 6 got moved back to November. So families who are looking for something to go see together, who aren't that interested in the superhero franchise, they only have Maleficent to really choose from. And so tell me, is it working for you or not? We got a lot of great content coming up on Cinema Blend this week, but let's start talking about Maleficent. Did it work for your kids? Do you think it's a family film? Was it a little bit too dark? Was it a little bit too plot heavy? Did the effects wow you guys? Weigh in the comment section below, of course, and thank you so much for listening to the Monday Movie Memo.